Jesus came into this world to heal it and to open up membership of the family of God to messed up, screwed up people. So we're all a mess. Like, I'm a mess, you're a mess, everyone who watches this documentary is a mess. We don't gain access to God's family by being moral in one area and not in another area, whether it's our sexuality or anything. So everybody's welcome in the church. Everybody's welcome in the kingdom of God. But having come into his family, God wants to heal and restore us so that we start to live out his intentions, so for human flourishing. So what that would mean is, for somebody who had same gender attraction, it would mean learning over the course of their lives to be disciplined in their expression of their sexual desires.
Six years ago this March, I went to Canada's Next Top Model, the finale filming of the show, and there was wine and it was great, and then after we went to this other party and there was free drinks there because it was a new bar and it was launching. And
so that's why I was there, free drinks.
Yeah. And my friend Emily actually spotted Owen and he was chatting with her and she's like, I think this guy's gay. I think I should introduce him to Stefan. So she did, and next thing I know, waking up the next day, don't know where I am, don't know. Then we got married. Like, it's kind of
the next day.
I think today's fairy tale wedding, for most, not for all, is grand and big, a lot of guests. The girl's wearing the big white dress with a lot of details, and it's just, they're going very much into details of their wedding. For example, the flowers, the colors, the bridesmaids, and it's just a part of the expression of themselves. They're trying to express who they are as a couple.
Being Italian, and I've been to many weddings, so I think I've seen them, and they're all pretty similar, you know? It's like...
There's a formula, right?
There's a formula, and like that's what the fairy tale is to them. That you have church in the morning, and then you do the ceremony, and then you have a break during the day, and you go get your photos taken, and then you go and you have your then the dinner at night and reception, and that's kind of what I knew as what a wedding was.
The fairy tale wedding is something that it comes from Disney and is very much a Cinderella-based thing. And that's really not something that appeals to us as queer people. So when we say fairy, we think of fairy in the gay sense.
And glitter and
yeah, lots of color, lots of fancy outfits.
Well, that's what we think. That's our version. I mean, there's, you know, the fairy tale wedding as it exists in our culture is pretty narrow. It's incredibly consumerist and involves spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on a day, on, you know, dreams come true for a day kind of thing, and everything is about that day. And there's very little focus on the marriage part. It's just about the wedding.
Yeah, fairy tale wedding seems like a lot of potential for disaster, if you ask me. Like, you know, you're setting your hopes and your vision on this one day in your life, and if it's not totally perfect, you know, your dream is crushed, right? I mean, that's like the bridezilla nightmare or whatever. I don't think that was the case for Stefan and I. We didn't like set out to like, oh my God, I can't wait to get married. Like we talked about, it wasn't really on the agenda for us before we met one another. And then when we did get married, we did it in a way that we wanted to do it. So we did have a fairy tale wedding. It was just our version of a fairy tale wedding, not one that we'd, you know, imagined since we were kids.
We got engaged in June, at the end of June, and then we started looking throughout the summer, like where we would go, where we wanted, and kind of like what places offered here. Because we chose Berkeley, it's an indoor-outdoor venue, and so I wanted it to feel like a destination of being in like Tuscany or in Italy and outside, and so we really brought that rustic feeling in.
the Berkeley Church and the Field House represent an alternative option to people in Toronto. It's not a standard banquet hall like something you'd find, you know, in the suburbs. It's a unique place, not just in the way it's designed, but also because it used to be a church. And I think it's also a property that attracts just as much haters as it does lovers. I am all for the legalization of same-sex marriages in Canada because I myself, a year and a half ago, got married to a man. And so that means a lot to me, obviously. So, and you know, it's huge for business. I mean, nobody has, you know, more over-the-top expensive weddings than us gays. And so if you're in the business, then we love you.
I find the wedding industry isn't very inclusive of gay weddings. I think it's, and maybe it is now, maybe a couple years later now, you know, it could be different, but you know, you see ads, you see those bridal shows, there's nothing really targeting them, I think, from what I've seen out there.
Something like today's event, the gay wedding show, that wasn't available when we went to get married. And I think it's amazing, and this is why I'm so happy to be here today, is seeing that this is now becoming available to same-sex couples. I think it's so important to have something that is specifically geared towards them, that we're represented in the community. But at the time that we got married, and we're only talking 4.5 years ago, I think there's a lot of acceptance for gay couples, but I don't necessarily think there's a lot of representation in terms of things that are very specific.
We did go to an early gay wedding show that some friends, someone that I had lived with years before was involved in promoting. And so they invited us, and it was interesting to go see. We already had settled most of those questions for ourselves, but we were interested in the way a wedding show would be marketed to a queer audience. And we found that at the time, because it was still very, very new, same-sex marriage had only been legalized for under a year when this happened. Yeah. So there was a lot of traditional wedding vendors who hadn't updated their samples. So they were all like John and Susan invite you to, you know, so they were very heterosexual names and images. And most of them didn't have much experience selling to a gay audience. So there was this kind of strange discomfort. No one was outright rude, it was just it didn't quite fit yet.
Well, you know what, there was good and there was bad. I was actually just discussing this with a friend of mine that we actually had originally gone to a wedding event for, I don't want to say straight individuals, but it wasn't geared towards gay individuals in the community. So it was difficult in some senses because we would go up to vendors and some of the vendors were questioning who was getting married, where's the groom. So some of that was challenging, but there's also the other side of it, and we had a lot of great vendors that treated us really great. The place that we ended up getting married at was extremely inclusive. There was no questions. They didn't bat an eyelash. And I think that's really, you know, as any couple, you don't want people to question your relationship. And it feels sort of bad when people are making you feel like you're different or maybe that your love isn't the same. So generally, I will say that our experience in Toronto was really great.
I think same-sex couples are definitely included in the wedding industry. They are not necessarily targeted to, only because I think a lot of businesses think that the market might be very small, but they are definitely included. So for example, at Pearl, if anybody was to come in and are getting married in a same-sex wedding, we would definitely include them and treat them just like a regular customer because that's what they are. But in terms of marketing, I don't think people are marketing specifically to them, only because they would have to split up their marketing into 2 different divisions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think religion played a huge role in our wedding. You know, it was about, you know, but it's still, you know, married as a, you know, a commitment and a celebration of our commitment to one another and, you know, a bond and all those important things. But religion is very, you know, obviously based on the Bible, and that can be read in a number of different ways. So, you know, a lot of, I think, you know, religion can certainly get in the way of a gay wedding.
Our view would be that marriage is a covenant given by God between a man and a woman, and it's lifelong and it's exclusive. And so same-sex marriage in biblical terms is a contradiction in terms. You can have same-sex relationships that last for a long time, but it wouldn't be appropriate biblically to call those marriage. I believe very strongly that the desire to have sex with someone of the same gender is a disordered desire. It's not the way God has intended us as people made in His image to function in this world.
Growing up Catholic, I got a lot from the religion, like I got a lot out of it. It's unfortunate that you reach a point where I felt like you gotta leave it. I gotta step away. If they think what I'm doing and how I'm living is wrong, then I can't be following what they say, and I don't need to go to church, and you know.
So I think that Jesus just said this is one of those desires. If you have a strong orientation and desire to have sex with someone of the same gender, then Jesus' view and the Bible's view is, well, that's a desire for your own good you should restrain and not act on. Which means that therefore marriage with its full sexual involvement is something that's not a possibility in my view, or a right thing or a good thing for people of the same gender to enter into.
It's funny because there's, you know, okay, well then gay guys can't get married, they can do whatever. In some states they'll recognize a different kind of, you know, same-sex union and it's got all the legal benefits or whatever, but you know, you can't call it being married. Well, I mean, I still want to be married to Stefan, even though, you know, if in some religious circles that would never be allowed, obviously, but I don't care. We're married anyway.
I think society's coming around. Like I think, like, you know what, like you said, it's still when somebody says they, oh, your wife, and how's your wife and feel about this, and you're like, no, it's I have a husband, and so I think they're, oh, okay, like it's okay, yeah, like how's your, you kind of catch them off guard, and you which I think is good. It's good to correct them, and but yeah, I think society's coming around.
If you ask, you know, society at large, I guess a good example would be when we go on, say, a vacation, and you know, we were at a resort in Cuba, and we meet a lot of people who don't really have a lot of gay friends or a lot of queer content in their lives. They have a lot of questions about family and about all sorts of aspects of our lives, about being married, about what we call each other. You know, what do you call each other is probably the most common one, and having to get past the giggles when there's two wives is usually a little point that you sort of have to just ride out with people and go, yeah.
Everybody was like, oh, it's my first gay wedding. I've never been to a gay wedding before. And I'm like, it's my first gay wedding.
No.
I've never been to a gay wedding before, and it's our wedding. Like, no. I was like, let's do this together. Let's have fun. There's nothing to, there's no expectations. Let's just go. And I think that's what it ended up being, so. It's
funny that a lot of people, like my stepmom was like, oh my God, I'm going to a gay wedding. Like my hair has to be the best. I got to be like so fabulous. But we're not that kind of, you know, we're a pretty easygoing couple. Like it wasn't, you know, you didn't need to wear Chanel or anything, you know.
People treat us more or less the same as they did before. I guess we maybe get you never know what's in someone's head. I think maybe we get a little bit more respect, but that could just be age as well.
As I understand the lie of the land here in Canada, there are some denominations where same-sex couples can get married in church. And I don't think that's right. I'm just not convinced that the people who advocate same-sex marriage are smarter, better, more insightful, more disinterested in the good sense and than Jesus was when it comes to how we should order our lives. And so I don't think our church here is going to change its mind anytime soon, and I certainly don't plan to.
You know, any free country, people should be free to get married as well, no matter who they are. If they love one another, they should be.